Rama asked, Lord, what is the seed of this fearful tree known as the mind? And what is the seed of that seed? And so on. So here's the mind is being compared to a mighty tree in whose branches awareness is entangled. I'd like to think of the mind as a vortex, like a whirlpool, which sucks us into it. And what keeps that whirlpool going? What starts it off? What keeps it going? Well, way back in section 5, we got the answer in chapter 13. A thought arising in the Supreme Being is known as individual consciousness. So it's simply a thought. A single notion will do it. But let's see what Vasishta says this time. Ram, the seed for this world appearance is the body within, with all its notions and concepts of good and evil. So the body within. Let's not get caught up in any kind of occult or psychic notion here. It's simply the body of all our notions and concepts of good and evil. This is reminiscent once again of the biblical story of the tree of knowledge. So the mind is like the tree of knowledge, which is the knowledge of good and evil. That body has a seed too, and that is the mind which flows constantly in the direction of hopes and desires, and which is also the repository of notions of being and non-being, and the consequent sorrow. The world appearance arises only in the mind, and this is illustrated by the dream state. The dream state has got a lot of lessons for us, not in terms of understanding dreams or anything else, but just the very phenomenon of the dream state. We pay so little attention to this phenomenon, or the implications of this phenomenon. In this phenomenon we live a very vivid life. A whole world is created, a whole world of experiences, of memory, every bit as believable at the time as this one we live in now. Of course, when we're in this state, the wakeful state, we don't pay any heed. We say it's only a dream. But at the time, it's not only a dream. It can be utterly terrifying or exquisitely erotic. It can be boring, it can be mundane, it can be exciting. That's all going on. Where did it come from? We wonder where this physical universe comes from. Billions of dollars or euros are poured into so-called atom-smashing machines to find out what this reality is all about. But what about the reality of dreams? We don't give that any thought. This all comes from the mind, clearly, as does this one. Whatever is seen here as the world is but the expansion of the mind, even as pots are transformations of clay. And pots hold things. Pots can hold all sorts of things. There are two seeds for the tree known as the mind, which carries within it innumerable notions and ideas. First, movement of prana, life force, and second, obstinate fancy. Again, we've got this yogic notion of prana coming in, which personally I think can obscure inquiry, and I prefer not to talk about it. Much of the time we've got by without any talk of prana whatsoever, but as I mentioned recently, and I've mentioned often enough, we do have these traditional yogic notions creeping in to the supreme yoga that is the yoga Vasishta, the yoga of self-inquiry. When there is movement of prana in the appropriate channels, then there is movement in consciousness and mind arises. Now the movement in mind is the movement of the attention. So I'm going to understand prana as the movement of the attention. You might think that's a little bit boring of me. Attention doesn't sound very interesting or exciting as prana does. But this is the point. Attention is very exciting. What is the attention? Look into it. Again, it is the movement of prana alone, when it is seen or apprehended by the mind, that is seen as this world appearance, which is as real as the blueness of the sky. It seems to me that prana can only be the attention. The cessation of the movement of prana is the cessation of the world appearance too. In chapter 19, talk was of the mind ceasing to be. Here it's the world appearance which is ceasing to be. And again I'll make the point that it's not the world appearance that ceases to be. The world appearance carries on. It's our involvement with it. It's our belief in the notions of a world appearance which we no longer subscribe to. When you realise that a mirage is a mirage, the mirage does not disappear. You're just no longer taken in by it. So again we've got this limited yogic notion of the cessation of mind and the cessation of world appearance. The cessation of the movement of prana is the cessation of the world appearance too. The omnipresent consciousness is awakened, as it were, by the movement of prana. If this does not happen, then there is supreme good. The yogic mind does not want to move away from this state of total quiescence, but that's not a natural condition. It's like saying the water should never have any ripples on the surface. Of course the water's got ripples on the surface, of course there are waves, but we no longer identify with the waves, we identify with the ocean of water. This is the practice of self-inquiry. Traditional yoga wants to keep everything calm and quiescent. When consciousness is awakened thus, awakened here is put in quotes, it begins to apprehend objects, ideas arise, and then sorrow. On the other hand, if this consciousness rests in itself, as if fast asleep, then one attains what is most desirable, and that is the supreme state. Therefore you will realize the unborn state of consciousness if you either restrain the movement of prana in your own psychological ground of concepts and notions, or refrain from disturbing the homogeneity in consciousness. It is when this homogeneity is disturbed and the consciousness experiences diversity that the mind arises and the countless psychological conditions spring up into activity. In order to bring about quiescence of the mind, the yogi practices pranayama, restraint of the movement of the life force, meditation and such other proper and appropriate methods. Great yogis regard this pranayama itself as the most appropriate method for the achievement of tranquility of the mind, peace, etc. Well, that may well be. Again though, we're getting traditional yogic notions here, and this is indicated once again by the fact that Vasishta is making reference to great yogis. Vasishta, who was supposed to have been created by Brahma directly to awaken humankind, does not need to make reference to great yogis. Now there might be times you might want to practice quiescence of mind, and that's fine. Go ahead, practice pranayama and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is not inquiry, and it's not self-inquiry. I shall now describe to you the other viewpoint, that of the men of wisdom, born of their direct experience. They declare that the mind is born of one's obstinate clinging to a fancy or deluded imagination. And this is more like it. This is what we get next, which is actually a very good description of self-inquiry.